Welcome to As I Live and Grieve, a podcast that tells the truth about how hard this is. We're glad you joined us today. We know how hard it is to lose someone you love and how well-intentioned friends and family try so hard to comfort us. We created this podcast to provide you with comfort, knowledge, and support. We are grief advocates, not professionals, not licensed therapists. We are you.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back again to As I Live and Grieve. Thanks again so much for joining us every week. With me today is Susan Combs, and she has a very, very special, wonderful, and amazing legacy that in the midst of her grief, she has created in memory of her father. I'm going to let her tell you all about it. Hi, Susan. Thanks for joining me today.
Hi, Kathy. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure, certainly. Would you start out by just telling our listeners about what your legacy is?
So, my legacy is actually kind of continuing one of my father. My father was a major general and a civilian judge. He served our country in the military for over 39 years. And he was one of those guys that was good when nobody was watching. And he did a lot of service. He mentored a lot of people. He bestowed a lot of life lessons on me that I've shared with a lot of people in my book, Pancakes, that came out in 2022. And so the legacy that I want to continue for him is also one of just doing good when nobody's watching. So I've actually incorporated as a nonprofit for Pancakes to Roger, and I know we're going to get into that in a little bit. Mm-hmm. But the mission of Pancakes to Roger is to connect veterans with funding opportunities to do good in their backyards and beyond.
That's super. This is near and dear to my heart because my late husband, Tom, was a Vietnam veteran. He was retired Army, and I too support the veterans many, many ways. But I think this idea that you had is especially touching and endearing. So at what point, your dad was ill for quite a while, as I understand, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So my father was diagnosed with Agent Orange related throat cancer in 2008. And, it's one of those things. My mom always said we were fat, dumb, and happy, right? We didn't realize how good we had it for 10 years until it was the end. I'll tell you that 10 years wasn't super easy for him. He had some major surgery that he didn't have an epiglottis. Mm. So that's the flap that covers your windpipe.
Right.
So when it came to eating and things like that, he had to be very cautious. So he couldn't really engage in conversation when we were having mealtime. And for most people, that's where a lot of times people have their great, deep, family conversations.
Sure.
So, but like I said, we had 10 relatively good years. My father had a Winnebago and he liked to travel. And so he would go to, military reunions and things like that all across the country. And then the last year of his life, he relapsed twice. Mm. And so the second relapse, we knew it was pretty much the end. And I live in New York City and I grew up in a town of 1,000 people in the northwest corner of Missouri. And I was fortunate enough that I was able to return home and move back home for basically the entire summer to help care for him when he was on hospice. Right. And it's one of those things that I think a lot of times people think of hospice as just such a negative connotation. And it's just like, oh, that's the end. I'm actually a hospice volunteer now to kind of pay homage to hospice and how good they were to our family. And hospice is a beautiful thing.
Right.
And, we were always told, don't bring them in too late because it's a comfort. Mm-hmm. It's about making people comfortable and supporting the family. And my father went on hospice in July. It was around, I think it was July 14th. And then he ultimately passed away on August 22nd, 2018. And it's one of those things that my dad and I had such a cadence. My dad, military guy, mm-hmm. He and I were both the type A's in our family, really scheduled and regimented. And I'll tell you, I think I miss that more than anything else because the rest of my family are not type A's. And so when it comes to processes and schedules, they drive me pretty crazy. I'll let you know. But my dad and I, we had a cadence where kind of our rule of thumb is if anybody woke up in the middle of the night, you checked on dad. My father, the last year of his life, he had a feeding tube and he was also on oxygen. And we were very fortunate enough to actually have hospice at home. So since we had hospice at home, we had a hospital bed for him in what he called his I Love Me room mm-hmm. that had all his military accolades and awards. And my mom always said, I don't even know why the hell we worried about the paint we colored the walls because you couldn't even see the walls. But so I would get up at 5 a.m. every day and I would check on my dad. And if he was good, then I would go to the gym and I would come back and I'd check on him again. And if he was still good, I would go get cleaned up for the day. And then I'd come and help him get ready for the day and help him with his tube feeding since he had the feeding tube. And then I would literally sit in my childhood home on the floor at the coffee table with my laptop after I got him in his recliner. And I would just work there all day.
Right.
And so that if my dad needed something, I was right there. But I mean, as you know, and I'm sure a lot of your people that are listening know, caregiving is not for the faint of heart.
No.
It is brutal. I look at pictures of myself from during that time and I look 10 years older.
Yes.
You know, I was sleeping with a baby monitor on a couch in the room next to his, just in case he would need something. I was right there. And it was exhausting.
Yes.
And, you know, I always tell people, you know, especially that are going through this, you got to make sure to fill your cup.
Mm-hmm.
So the gym for me was filling my cup because I knew in the morning I would have 1 hour to myself. And if I had to give everything else away the rest of the day, at least I had one thing for myself.
Right.
And so whatever that is for you, I mean, you might not be a gym rat like me, but maybe it's prayer and meditation in the morning. Maybe it's reading. Maybe it's just taking a walk. Maybe it's sitting out on your porch with a cup of coffee. Just don't feel guilty about filling your cup because it's, like I said, you can just give everything away at the end of the day. And then you had nothing to give back.
Yes.
So I think that's just so important. And we can go into the specific story of Pancakes for Roger if you want me to too.
Yes, and we'll get to that. I do want to kind of reassure our readers, and I know I went through that caregiving phase, although for me caring for Tom, it was a period of 8 months. He actually died of an Agent Orange related brain tumor, which was very difficult as well. And to watch your loved one decline while you are giving your all, I remember specifically at one point, I thought to myself, I have no me left. Yeah. I have given up everything. I've given up my routine, lunch once a week or once a month with this friend or that friend. I had given it all up for multiple daily trips to labs and doctor appointments and analysts and everything to care for him. You do it willingly, certainly, because of your love for that person, but it happens gradually, and you're so focused on your mission of caring for that person that you don't realize what you're giving up. So I love what you just said about filling your cup. It's extremely important. It's a part of self-care. Sometimes I would use the analogy, if you're on a plane and they do that pre-flight safety thing and they talk about if the oxygen mask dropped from the ceiling, put yours on first. And it's that whole concept that you have to do what you can so that you can survive first before you can help other people. So,
absolutely.
Yeah. And after Tom died, I remember I was redefining myself. Now, they can say what they want to about anticipatory grief. I don't feel, even though I knew it was coming, and as the day got closer and closer, I could tell it was not only inevitable, it was coming soon. The last day I walked into his room at the veterans facility he was at, I remember thinking to myself when I heard him breathe that this was the day. This was the day it was going to happen. And it did happen that day. I thought, okay, it's happened. It's over. There was a momentary sense of relief that we had reached that point. But man, about 10 minutes later, it hit me, and it hit me hard. Did you find a similar experience?
I think for me, and I've talked to other people about this too. And like you said, you knew it was coming. I knew it was coming too. Like I don't know any different, right? So I don't know it. Like I've talked to friends that have had that immediate, like their father had a heart attack and they had no time. I mean, I think that would be such a shock to your system that I don't even know how you could function. But then I think maybe after you've had time to reflect, maybe you can say, well, at least they didn't suffer.
Right.
But I don't know any different than how I went through it. But I think for me, I think the mind can play tricks on you. And I don't know about with you and your circumstance, but I didn't remember my father as the sick person.
Right.
I remembered him as the healthy person.
Yes.
And then it made me miss him more.
Yes.
And so it's one of those things that I remember every single day before I walked into his room. I would pray he was gone.
Yes. Yes.
Because I knew he was suffering.
Yes.
But I was gutted. And I still am. I mean, it's been 5 years.
I know. We hear it in your voice. I can see it on your face. And I'm right there with you. You tear up. I'm going to tear up too, because it's so real. And in an instant, it comes right back.
Oh,
it
absolutely.
comes right back.
Absolutely.
So
I mean, and I've talked to people about that, and they say the same thing, where it's just like, they don't remember the person sick. They remember him.
Right.
And then it just makes them miss him more.
Yeah. Now, one of the things I have come to realize and believe is that as you move forward on your grief journey, And we all at some point do move forward. It takes a long, long time for some. Others just kind of start walking, so to speak, and they kind of move right through it. But at some point, I think you have the realization that you don't want to go on with that volume and that overwhelming sense of sadness and depression, that you need to do something different in your life. Did you also feel that? And is that when you started to think about what can I do?
So for me, like, I've been somebody that I've never had to deal with any mental health, type of issues. So I've just never been a real depressive person. Okay. So, but I will say that my brothers have dealt with that. Mm-hmm. And so they dealt with the grief much differently than I dealt with the grief. Right. I dealt with the grief more like my dad did, move a muscle, change a thought. So I will say that I think, especially in a family, there's always somebody that steps in, and I was the one that stepped in because my thought process was very similar to my father's. And like I said, he was a general, he was a judge. There was a lot of shit.
Sure.
My dad, there were 7 bank accounts and 8 properties. I learned a lot in getting things move over the trust before we triggered hospice. And I was fortunate enough to sit down with my dad twice before he passed away and spreadsheet a lot of things, because I knew, and it was things like, who's the plumber? Who's the electrician? Right. Who do I call to sell the Winnebago to?
Sure.
Who do I talk for the military stuff? Like the VA benefits for my mother, because I knew my mother was going to be in such devastation and grief. She wasn't going to be able to deal with that, nor is that her skill set.
Right.
I'm like uber type A. I'm very organized. I own businesses, and it's just, that was an easier thing for me. But I will say that I think my grief was a little bit delayed because I threw myself into work mode so quickly.
Okay.
I remember I had one week, I talked to one of my brothers on a Friday, my brother Matt, and he was like, how's your week? And I was like, Lord, I said, I logged 14 hours on phone calls for Dad. And he was just like, he said, is there anything I can do? And I'm like, well, not now. It was like the VA.
Yeah.
In his defense, my father was buried in Arlington. And so I was dealing with Arlington and all that stuff. But the thing is, I check my ego. And so I am okay asking for help. And I am also, in my office, we call it tenacity, like tenacious, where the ability to find the answer. So I'm really good at knowing where to go to get the information. So since I went into work mode, and I'll tell you, he wasn't buried in Arlington until a year after his passing. Okay. Just because Arlington, they have 40 services a day right now, because it's the perfect storm. We still have World War II guys. We have Vietnam, we have Korea, we have, Afghanistan, Desert Storm. And current conflicts as well. And so there's just so much that, when my grandparents were buried there, my grandmother was buried within 2 weeks in 83. My grandfather was buried like within a month. Right. It's totally different. So I think that Arlington was definitely the closure for me.
Okay.
I wailed. There's videos of the service, and you just hear me. Yeah. Because I don't think I felt like the closure.
Right.
But writing the book was actually like a gift to myself, I would say. So to be honest, I had people that had been after me to write a book, and I always thought, I do a lot of public speaking, and I always thought, okay, the book is going to be kind of how I end my talks, with unsolicited advice that gives quick quotes from people that have mentored me along the way, give some history about that person, and tell you how to plug and play that information. That's what it was supposed to be. But then the general came in and took over the whole freaking thing. And so it's just like, it's mostly lessons from my dad. And then, it's sprinkled with other mentors I've had. Right. But I ugly cried every week that I wrote with my partner. And it was very cathartic for me. Yeah. And, and I think the thing too, I have one girlfriend that I grew up with that she lost her dad when we were in high school. But for the most part, I was still in my 30s when my dad passed, and I don't really have any friends, like close circle friends outside of my girlfriend, Carrie, that had gone through that. So my friends didn't really know how to support me. And, I call it the Dead Dads Club. In my mom's small town, I call it the Widows Brigade. It's just like, there's these people that will come out of the woodwork and help you and support you that might just be a perimeter friend. And they tell you exactly what you need. Yes. And then what that also kind of ingrained in me makes me want to do those things too. So when somebody posts on Facebook, on Instagram, that they lost somebody close, I reach out to them privately. I don't make a big grand statement on their picture that they posted. That, that gets lost in the shuffle. I remember that, and not even being able to comprehend. But if somebody took the time to text me or send me an email or private message me, then I could take a second and I could be real and I could be honest with how I was feeling. And they understood. And that was so helpful.
Yes, yes. So let's move on now to Pancakes for Roger. Tell me about it.
So Pancakes for Roger actually is, I mean, we're calling it a movement.
Mm-hmm.
So, with my dad, so as I said, he was on auction and he was on a feeding tube and we had that kind of mourning cadence. And one morning when I went to his hospital bed to help him get around for the morning, he wasn't there. And I went into the front room. He wasn't there. I went into the living room. He wasn't there. I checked the bathroom. He wasn't there. I went to the kitchen and he was sitting there with a placemat, his silverware and a plate. And he had set the table.
Mm-hmm.
And I looked at him. I said, Dad, what are you doing? And he said, well, I want pancakes for breakfast. And it just broke my heart.
Sure.
Because I knew this man for a year, he had never complained about a feeding tube. He had never said, oh, I wish I could do this. Like he was a soldier, right?
Mm-hmm.
He knew what his journey was. He knew this is how it was. And he accepted that. And I looked at him, I said, oh God, Dad, there's nothing in this world that I want to give you than pancakes for breakfast. But I said, Dad, we're on hospice. We have a DNR. I said, if you choke here, we're done. And I just don't think we're quite ready to be done. Yeah. And of course he said, oh yes, I can. Matt said I could. Well, Matt is my brother and he's a nurse and he wasn't there that morning. So I knew we were dealing with some oxygen confusion from being too low.
Right.
And so I said to him, well, let me see what I can do. So his tube feeding formula, the general always wanted it heated up for 14 seconds. He would know if I'd done 13, I'd done 15. He knew. So I heated it up for 14 seconds and I came over to the table and I set it on the table and he said, what's that? And I said, that's your syrup. And so his oxygen levels kind of rallied around. He kind of smiled at me, resigned. He said, okay. So, a few short weeks later, he passed away. And when I came back to New York City, I took one day off work. I needed one day to shut out the noise, not think about work, not look at emails. I just wanted one day for me before I hit the ground running with my family office work.
Right.
And my husband said, why don't we go have some pancakes? So we went to the Bel Air Diner in Queens. We had some pancakes. My husband took a picture. I talked about it on social media. And I said, if you're so inclined, why don't you have some pancakes for Roger and think about all your blessings in your life? Because our lives can change in the blink of an eye. And things like enjoying a stack of pancakes just could not be in your cards anymore. Right. And so I just was talking. I didn't even think it would ever go anywhere. It was just like I was sharing some of my heart and some of my sorrow. And then people started having pancakes. And people started sending me pictures of having pancakes. And then people started saying, I can't have pancakes and not think about your dad. And so what we started doing is my father's birthday was February 22nd. Okay. So the month of February, what we do for every pancake loving picture that we get on social media using the hashtag on public facing profiles, Pancakes for Roger, or they can tag our Pancakes for Roger Instagram or Facebook account, we will make a donation to the University of Missouri School of Law Veterans Clinic. Oh. And the Veterans Clinic actually provides free legal services for veterans and their families navigating the VA claims and appeals process, discharge upgrades, and a whole lot more. So it's a way to kind of give a living legacy, and it's kind of cool because, my father's passion was the legal field as a judge, and then he was a 2-star general. So it's kind of combining both of those things and just doing good that way.
I love it.
So I will tell you, we're gearing up for Pancake Month, right? February is just a few days away. But last year we got all 50 states, we got 24 additional countries, and we got all 7 continents. So I'm really trying to campaign for Antarctica because that was a real hard one to get. I don't know if we can. I have a friend that he was going to have a vacation in Antarctica, and he texted me 2 days ago and he said, Susan, the Antarctica trip got moved to 2025. I'm like, son of a bitch. I'm like, we got my dummy in Antarctica. So it's one of those things that it's just that I'll tell you, like, the most rewarding thing for me is people tell me that their kids are growing up on Pancakes for Roger. So it's like these little kids that have been doing this campaign for the past 5 years are like, they're talking about military service. They're talking about service. They're talking about being appreciative of the little things in their life. And their kids are getting that lesson. So, we have a lot of fun with it. We do awards. This year we're adding an award, which I'm super excited about. So we do like the most patriotic pancake, the most creative pancake, the most school spirit pancake, the most overall pancake, but we're actually adding the most creative location to have a pancake. So I have some Broadway friends that they're like, it's on.
It's on.
Yeah. So one of them's actually in a vampire play right now. And they're like, we might get pancakes with vampires. And I'm like, that would be incredible. So we're going to try to get an aircraft carrier too. So we'll see what ends up happening.
Oh, that's wonderful. It's such a wonderful story. And as it turns out, I know we're recording this today, but this is actually going to launch in February. So it's going to be certainly a Pancakes for Roger. The story it warms my heart. I love when people can kind of, I won't say use their grief, because that's not what you're doing, but you're extending your purpose in life by a memory of your dad that is so precious and so intimate to you. And you're allowing everyone around you and people you don't know from countries you've never been to, you're allowing them also a little insight in your life and how special your dad was to you. Yeah. That was, now if it was me doing that for Tom, it would have to be coffee from Tim Hortons. That was his thing. But
coffee for Tom, I can see
it. Coffee from Tim for Tom or something,
There you go.
But I just love when, and I call it a legacy because it keeps the memory of your dad alive for years and years and years to come. And if there's one thing I also know about people who grieve is it makes me feel good when I encounter someone and they say, oh, I miss Tom. I remember Tom. When they speak their name, it just really, really touches you. So, the month of February is going to be so dynamic. And I did check out your website and I did look at the pancake map and I thought, oh my gosh, this is an international explosion.
Yeah.
And
we got great military backing.
Absolutely.
So it's just like we got people stationed all over the world.
Absolutely. So and I'm still connected. Tom was connected with our local Vietnam Veterans of America chapter. And I happen to be the editor of their newsletter. And I'm working on February's newsletter. So there probably will be a little insert in there about Pancakes for Roger. And then I will send you the link to it as well. But I think this is fabulous. And it is so wonderful of you to give of yourself, to give something so intimate as this memory of your dad that is just so, so special. And I love that things like this come from the grief we feel and experience. That just... Well, sometimes I just can't express in words what it does.
But it's just an easy, fun thing.
And
that's the thing. And I'll tell you, and we've gotten creative because I have some friends that are like, Susan, I just can't choke down a pancake. I hate pancakes. And I said, what about a kimchi pancake? What about a scallion pancake? What about a crepe? And then since we have the book, we allow people to do pictures with the book.
Nice.
So it's just like, so if people do pictures with the book and pancakes, that counts for double. So it's just like, so we're every single thing. And then we're doing actually a couple of weightlifting competitions, one in New York and one in Kansas City in February. And so we have shirts for the competition. So that's going to count triple. So I will say my two little nieces, Josie and Evie, they're excited. And so they got their Dragon Slayer hoodies. And so on February 1st, there's going to be a picture with them with their hoodies and the book and pancakes. So that's going to count triple. So it's pretty exciting.
All right. Now explain, you just said Dragon Slayer. What's the connection with Dragon Slayer?
Okay. So the full name of the book is Pancakes for Roger, a mentorship guide for slaying dragons.
Okay.
So when I set out to write the book, it was originally, after I saw my dad was taking it all over, it was obvious it was going to be Pancakes for Roger. And he said a mentorship guide for life. And then at 2 a.m. one day I popped awake and said, no, a mentorship guide for slaying dragons. And I remember my publishing team and my editors and things like that. They're like, I don't know, Susan. I was like, you don't know me yet. Like once you get to know me, this is the right title. And so we kept working together. And they're like, yeah, that's it. So slaying dragons is just an obstacle, right? It's just like we have decisions we make every single day, right? And so it's just like those obstacles that come into our way, dealing with grief. Sometimes getting up in the morning and slaying a dragon.
Absolutely.
And so we decided to call our first weightlifting competition the Dragon Slaying Competition. So we're super excited about that. So we have an image that I've named him Axel. I don't know. It's just like a really jacked dragon, and his barbell, instead of being plates, it's actually pancakes or the weights. So it's going to be super fun, and we're really excited about it.
That's great. Sadly, our time is winding down. It's early. I target 30 minutes and I always feel really sad when the time winds down because I get excited about things like this and I could just go on and on. But before I actually wind down and say farewell to everyone, I want to turn the microphone over to you. And I want you to either tell something different or repeat what you said about how people can support Pancakes for Roger, whatever you want to tell our listeners. We also have an international group of listeners in over 90 countries around the world.
Wow.
So this is an opportunity to really spread it again.
Yeah.
So
Pancakes
tell people how they can support Pancakes for Roger. Go right ahead.
So Pancakes for Roger Inc. actually incorporated as a nonprofit at the end of 2023. So we're actually in the process of building on our endowment because ultimately, hopefully, it's looking like we're going to be able to do a couple of them this year. But ultimately speaking, we're going to be able to give grants to veterans that want to do good in their backyards and beyond. So think of service projects. Say you have a veteran that's a little league coach, but maybe they don't have any equipment. Say you have a veteran that's wanting to start a business and needs a little bit of seed money to get kind of the nitty gritty paid for in the beginning. So that's kind of what we're wanting to eventually take this to. This year, we're still going to be supporting the Veterans Clinic at the University of Missouri. I will say a lot of times people think when you say University of Missouri Veterans Clinic and they live in Albuquerque, they're out. That's not the case. So you just have to find them. You don't have to be from Missouri. You don't have to be a Missouri grad. I always tell people that actually a lot of the universities around the country have veterans clinics. So check out a major university. If say you're a veteran and you have a claim and you think that something happened or you're not quite sure of the paperwork, reach out to those major state universities and see if they have a veterans clinic that can provide you with free legal services. And then when it comes to like the pancake campaign, just have pancakes. I mean, and I will tell you, we don't need to have proof that you ate them. I just post with a picture. But man, so we got 24 countries last year, and that's the most additional countries we've ever gotten. So if you have 90 countries as listening, I mean, that would be just absolutely incredible if we can top that. That was a really high bar this year, or last year rather, but we're super excited to see what this year will bring. And as for the book is separated into 4 sections: self-love, family, and career. I've actually had a lot of veterans that they actually buy it when somebody has a kid as a guide to raise a strong child. And I will say that I had a wonderful father. I understand that not everybody did. So a lot of times there's people that grow up and they don't get all the great life lessons that I did. And I was trained that if you get a good piece of advice, it's your duty to share it with somebody else. So that's what I tried to do with the book. So, we always say, have a pancake, use the hashtag, and help a vet. That's all you got to do.
Well, I have so many things I could say about this. Susan, you spoke so eloquently about it. So let me just add a few things. I have grandchildren, and one of the things I have tried to teach them, because I sense that our overall commitment to philanthropy, to giving to charities, is kind of waning in the generations below me. I want to show my grandchildren and younger kids everywhere that one of the easiest ways to support some type of charity or nonprofit is to find an event they have where you get something in return. So here is your perfect opportunity to instruct your children what it means to support a charity, an organization that is helping others for purely selfless reasons. And hey, come on. All they have to do is eat pancakes and post it on social media. So this, I think, is a perfect opportunity for that with younger children. I'm going to go have Pancakes for Roger. Does it have to be a particular day in February?
It's the entire month.
So you can have pancakes once a week, every day if you want.
I'll tell you.
Doesn't matter. Have pancakes and make sure you take a picture and post it. This is so simple, and you are helping thousands of people, not to mention the smiles that you are spreading everywhere. And tell your kids to tell their friends, their classmates. Wouldn't it be great?
Spirit Award. Yep, we do a school spirit award.
If an entire classroom had pancakes? Or even better, an entire school had pancakes. There are so many ways to be creative and do things like this. And what a great opportunity. And this one helps our veterans, again, which are near and dear to me. You hear me talk about Tom a lot. And he would have been in the Army until the day he died if they would have kept him. But he injured his foot and, they said, no, sorry, it's time to leave. So anyway, and again, I can go on and on and on. I think making yourself smile is a great form of self-care, because when you smile, you start to look forward. You cease looking back. So do all these good things. Buy the book, gift the book. How could you go wrong? Come on. All right. It's time to say goodbye. Please take care of yourselves, everyone. Susan, thank you so much. You have brightened my day incredibly with your story. And now every February for me is going to be Pancakes for Roger. And every time I see or hear the word pancakes, I'm going to think of your dad. Great memory. Thanks. And to our audience out there, thanks for tuning in. Take care of yourselves. Come back again as we all continue to live and grieve.
Thank you so much for listening with us today. Do you have a topic that you'd like us to cover, or do you have a question from one of our episodes? Please email us at info@asilivengrieve.com and let us know. We hope you will find a moment to leave a review, send an email, and share with others. Join us next time as we continue to live and grieve together.